It's a happy Saturday and the sun is shining, although it's winter time. But all said, everything is well. The only problem we are having is the problem of this terrorism all around the world. And that's of course why I'm here again, as always, to give my own little contribution, at least what I know is the best way to go about it. And I will have to show some certain documentations to prove exactly what I mean. And those documentations come from all around, from people. The documentations you have online, I'm going to use to prove my points. All I will beg is for people to have the endurance to watch this about maybe 45 minutes to 1 hour program that I'm going to run now. It's going to be very interesting, very educational. So you please sit tight as we go on now to help the world solve this problem of terrorism. We want to understand the viewpoint of what exactly the people are fighting. What are we fighting? First of all, I would like to go on to present what you see here on this upper side of the screen is my Facebook site. You can as well go there. You see where I've drawn some compilations of all this, some of these things I think are important that I'm going to use for this broadcast now. I've been trying to tackle this issue, trying to make people understand that we are going about it the wrong way. And let's see if this will help a little. Meanwhile,
breaking tonight, Hillary Clinton is not the only one who will not identify this enemy as radical Islam. Here is President Obama just earlier today.
And so, to the degree that anyone would equate the terrible actions that took place in Paris with the views of Islam, those kinds of stereotypes are counterproductive. They're wrong. They will lead, I think, to greater recruitment into terrorist organizations over time if this becomes somehow defined as a Muslim problem as opposed to a terrorist problem.
We hold it there. As a Muslim, if we identify it as a Muslim problem instead of a terrorist problem, there is that problem. There is that problem. We need to identify exactly what this is. Is this a Muslim problem or a terrorist problem? It depends on how you look at it. When it is a terrorist problem caused by people infiltrating the Muslim religion, it becomes also a Muslim problem, in the sense it's a problem to the religion itself, Islam, because it's been damaged, it's been dragged to mud here. These are the people who should be most concerned. Why are we not talking or relating the terrorist issue with the Christian or Hindus or Buddhist religion? I want us to carry on. What I just tried to pick that point there to make you understand is that we should understand that yes, it is a terrorist problem, but it has to do with an existing religion which is Muslim, Islam. Then it becomes an Islamic problem because they have the shame, the blame, the damage on their religion if they don't do nothing about it. Let's continue.
Now, Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She is the author of the book Heretic and founder of the Ayaan Hirsi Ali Foundation. Ayaan was raised Muslim and was forcibly mutilated before renouncing the religion and its ideals. Ayaan, thank you very much for being with us tonight. And so what of that argument? We've heard that argument from the president and his supporters that if we go to war on radical Islam, we're going to alienate the rest of the Muslim world, not just the radical Islamists, the rest of the Muslim world?
I think the president is right. The United States of America and the rest of Western civilization is not at war with Islam, but Islamic extremists is invoking Islamic.
The world, the United States or the rest of the world are not at war with Islam, but Islamic extremists. That is the problem. That is why and where Islam is most concerned. That is why Islam becomes a problem here. They have to take care of this problem. Let's go on and understand it really.
Theology and aided and abetted by some Muslim nations, the most prominent of which is Saudi Arabia, another one is Qatar.
Another one, the Saudi Arabia and Qatar she mentioned. There are the countries that are aiding and abetting Islamism, or what do you call it? Extremism. Yeah. So, just a little jump to what is happening around the world. The question should be, why is it that these people coming over this all these refugees now don't go to these places where they have the same religion? When they have problem, there is their brother man who is supposed to be of more greater help. The question goes to the Europeans, to the Western world, why are you so concerned?
Are waging war on us. And this strategy from 9/11, that is indeed the former President Bush, but also other Western leaders, the strategy that if we say this is something within Islam, we're going to lose the battle to them, that has been tried, and it is failing, as we are seeing now in Paris. I lived in Europe, and the entire leadership agreed on this argument, but what we're witnessing now is a failure of that strategy. We need to face the problem, and we should start by naming it.
We look at this over and over again, and we believed here in America, many, that if we wouldn't use that terminology and pulled back from the Middle East somewhat, perhaps they wouldn't hate us so much. Perhaps they wouldn't want to hit us. Perhaps there'd be some détente with these people. It now appears that hasn't worked.
If you pull back from the Middle East, perhaps they will not attack you, perhaps. But the problem is that the damage has already been done. And now again, I would like to continue the tape to see the re-argument why that cannot even work, even without even attacking them. Coming.
It hasn't worked. Listen, one of the things that we really have to digest is that Islamic extremism is older than this election cycle and the last one and 9/11. It is at least, Sunni Islamic extremism is at least 95 to 98 years old. And it's going to outlast this election cycle. This problem is to stay with us. It's not what we do or say, what we don't do or we don't say. We have a substantial number of people on the planet who are Muslim, invoking Islamic theology, who have declared war on our way of life, the association between men and women, on our tolerance, our freedoms, the core on everything that Western civilization is. We need to acknowledge that and defend ourselves. And the way, the first thing to do is to acknowledge the ideology.
I want to ask you about that, because that's the thing.
Ideology, for instance.
That's the thing, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we call them or what we do. It seems they object to our belief system. They object to our way of life. They object to the fact that we don't necessarily believe in Allah, that we have the First Amendment, that we have the Bill of Rights. They object to so much about who we are and the way we live. And
thank you very much. That is that point. That is the core point of the whole thing in this world. What is happening today, what they just said now, is the main point. They object to everything that is the Western way of life. Why have they objected to this? Let's hear that version once again. You bring my memory back. I would like to hear that version once again.
That's the thing,
ideology, for instance.
That's the thing, is that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we call them or what we do. It seems they object to our belief system. They object to our way of life. They object to the fact that we don't necessarily believe in Allah, that we have the First Amendment, that we have the Bill of Rights. They object to so much about who we are and the way we.
Yeah, they object to everything. Now, when you are talking about this being a religious problem, has to do with God and the world. Now, they are objecting to these things because they have the religious belief that the Western way of life is completely against the way of God. Now, it is now for the Western way people themselves, the Western world, to think about that. What is that our way of life? Because if they don't think, if we ourselves, who believe we are the people who are right, don't think about what will God want in His word, because it's the word for God. If you are in this, all of us who are speaking, we are Christians or Muslims. If you say you are moderate Muslims, if you say you are anything you are, we all believe, if we believe in God, that means we know that this word is for God. Now, the system, the belief system, the things you do, your way of life, that these people are against, is it a good one? Is it the will of God? The problem here is that these people came now to become the judge, which is wrong. Meaning, these people came in. These people is otherwise a punishment from God to that way of life, because we are going to talk about that way of life. Not that it's not like what the ISIS are doing is good, but it's a punishment from God. So in any way you want to stop that this ISIS, you have to change your ways, because this way of life that we are going to revise and look into those ways of life. We are really going to look into these ways of life. I'm going to come up with that. Then you evaluate these ways of life if it's the way of life that God wants us to live in His word. If we are Christians, true Christians, and if we are people who believe we are on the good side and the right side of history and religion, then we have to evaluate our way of life that makes these people think that religiously, because that's what they are coming with. You said it, because we don't believe in their Allah, that means it has something to do with God. Because you have your third amendment, you have to also think about those your laws as your way of life. You have to think about your style of life. We have to think about everything we do. We have to go into YouTube and watch the lifestyle of our people. We have to watch that freedom. We are going to talk about that, or show some posts, some videos that relates to that. But meanwhile, let's continue and finish this very record here.
Live. And so you wrote a fascinating piece recently about how we could, as a practical matter, go about protecting ourselves. And the first thing in your article was learn from Israel.
Absolutely. Israel, from the time it was founded, had to deal with this. And over time, and in a painful way, Israel developed an infrastructure. It is legal. It is counterterrorism measures. It's intelligence. They know what they're doing. We should stop demonizing Israel. We should start learning from them. And by my knowledge, Israel really hasn't declared war on Islam. Israel collaborates with some of the Muslim countries when they want to collaborate with Israel. But
this section of this girl's comments now, everybody can see how far the truth in it. If Israel is collaborating with Muslim countries, and you can see whether Israel has won terrorism. With instances she's about to give, which I will still play out, comparing what happened in France that it cannot happen in Israel. But we are seeing knife attacks. He tried to differentiate knife attack and the terrorist attack and all this attack, finding reasons always this side of the argument, Israel has not won. I'm sorry to say that.
Israel is at a place now where I think in terms of fighting domestic terrorism, they have made such headway that the scenes we've seen in Paris are unthinkable. Yes, the terrorists are using knives and cars and other desperate measures, but the mass murder of Israelis on Israeli soil is now unthinkable because of the measures that they've put in place. And I think we have a lot to learn from them.
I recommend the piece to everybody. It's fascinating and offers so many smart insights, as we always expect from you, Ayan.
Okay,
thank you for being here tonight.
All about that.
Thank you, man.
So we continue on the broadcast. Also, you know, what I'm trying to prove here is that the measures we are is wrong. The measures we are going about fighting this extremism is wrong. The understanding we have about it is wrong. We don't know what we are fighting in the first place. You cannot fight what you don't know. Unless we understand that this is a religious problem, unless we understand it as a punishment from God to us because of that our way of life, and unless we understand that we have to change our way of life before we can win terrorism. It's not as if terror, you know, people will say if we change our way of life, if we succumb to what they want, that means they have defeated. If you don't stop your going to parties, going to nightclubs, playing this kind of lives, activities that they don't cherish, all these kind of things, way of life anyway, that is their problem. If you don't, then they have won. It's not so. It is for God, because anything you are doing, you have to think, is that right for God? If it's wrong for God, anything that comes out or into what you are doing means it's a punishment from God, and not that ISIS is stronger than you, but the wrath of God is stronger than us. ISIS is a wrath from God to us. If you don't understand it like that, and you cannot win it if you don't wind back the clock to start doing the right thing. Let's go now and watch this very other I think all these are the kind of things now, the freedom of freedoms, the kind of things now that we have given ourselves freedom to.
Ruling on religious freedoms has enabled devil worshippers in Florida to hand out educational material about their beliefs to kids at state schools. We report now this report.
Public education in America often uses coloring books to teach young Americans about math, science, and current events. This year, a new book filled with games and lessons about Satanism could be distributed to students attending public school in Florida's Orange County.
These are some of our way of life, the kind of thing that we approve. These people will go to court, they will fight their way until they are approved, because the government will take their own share of the money from tax they are going to pay, and now the promotion of evil will be accepted because, like I said in my previous broadcast, the government has lost control because of freedom of this, freedom of that. They will go to court, they will find a chapter in their law book to say you have to give freedom to every freedom. When we know that God owns this world, or we are pretending. When we say we are Christians, if you call yourself anything and believe in the Lord Almighty and say there is heaven and hell, and you know all these things, you read the Bible, you go every Saturday or Sundays or Fridays to church and the mosque, and these are the kind of things a nation will allow. There are things that need strict ban. That is what is discipline. It doesn't mean that you don't have to have fun anymore. But there are things that are completely out of the question that we see that are being allowed today. That is that way of life we are talking about. Let's continue.
The 10-page Satanic Children's Big Book of Activities features characters named Annabelle and Damien who demonstrate rituals to explain Satanism. This expanding wealth of information America's young minds was made possible after a Florida judge last month ruled that if the Orange County School District allowed Christian groups to disseminate Bibles and other materials in its schools, then other religious and atheist groups should be given the same right to distribute.
And they will argue it, and they will win it. You see, it's a judge talking about it. These are the people who are educated. These are the people who will listen to their word. Like I said, Nwachukwu Emmanuel is nobody. Nobody's going to hear me. I don't have money. I'm nobody. I'm not educated. Nobody's going to listen. But a judge, everybody listens. They make the decisions. They are the reason why we are living today, anyhow we are living. But look at this decision. In a country where in your money stays God's own country. In a world where majority of the world are believing in God. And now we are openly accepting because of the freedom of freedoms that we are giving to ourselves. Freedom of everything. Freedom of lack of control. Let's continue.
Their material, and followers of the Antichrist seized on the decision to treat all faiths equally. A spokesman for the Satanic Temple tells Raw Story that, quote, if a public school board is going to allow religious pamphlets and full Bibles to be distributed to students, as is the case in Orange County, Florida, we think the responsible thing to do is to ensure that these students are given access to a variety of different religious opinions, as opposed to standing idly by while one religious voice dominates the discourse and delivers propaganda to youth, unquote. In a ruling that was aimed at maintaining religious neutrality, students who may never have intended to learn about Christianity, atheism, or Satanism will now receive an introduction to all three. Marina Portnaya, RT.
You see, that is one of those things here in the Western world also. Religion, when you believe that God is first. Religion, because you want freedom of freedom, and that is why we say that the Muslims are wrong. Religion is not even in their school books. It's not even in their subjects here in the Western world. Thank God religion is in the school subjects in Africa. Thanks to God that the word of God must continue to live in the hearts and the minds of our children. But in the Western world, look at it. The religion is not a subject. Children don't need to learn it. When you talk about the Christian side of, Christianity as a religion to come, the one we practice, the one we are so much inclined to hear in the Western world, when you talk about Christianity, they will not give their own religion that respect. How are you proud of your religion if you don't keep it above every other thing? How do you want to protect your religion if you don't say, you don't do this in my land? Is this one where I believe? How do you give freedom in everything up to freedom for people to choose a religion and worship it? People have the right to choose their own religion and worship it right in their place, but you have to have restrictions. The Muslims and the Christians are in one route. If you say God, they believe. If you call it Allah, if you call it God, for me, I believe it's just a matter of language. Unless if somebody wants to make another meaning into it. But when you people believe in God and you believe in heaven and hell, you have the same root. Somebody else who comes in and says the opposite, which is Satan, is what the people have to believe in. No, you don't have to allow that. If somebody says he don't want to believe, then he doesn't believe. But somebody cannot come and build a church of Satan. The complete opposite. Clear opposite. So we continue to see the way of life that God is now punishing us with ISIS. We think that ISIS is a force of evil. Of course, it's a force of evil. God used evil to teach lessons to his own people. It's always like that. The time he always unleash evil through something else to oppose. Look at what this one is an interesting one.
Ministerial responsibility on a matter of public policy. Now, just as we've somewhat forgotten that this whole story is part of a very unhappy record of British relations in the Middle East, which my honourable friend is going to raise again on Friday. Iraq was part of the world we took over when the Ottoman Empire disappeared. Britain bombed Iraq with chemical weapons in the 1920s, and a few months ago the Queen Mother put up a statue to the man who did it. Bomber Harris was the squadron leader who used chemical weapons against Iraq. We planned to occupy Kuwait in 1958, and it all came out with the papers when Selwyn Lloyd wrote to Foster Dulles and said, we might take over Kuwait as a crown colony. And the double standards of British policy in the Middle East is the thing that will be noticed by anyone in the Arab world who reads this debate. We didn't take the view we did about Turkey invaded Cyprus when the occupied territories were taken over by Israel. This Gulf War, look, some of the most brilliant scientists and engineers in the world are working on methods of death instead of the means of life. And billions and billions and billions of pounds are wasted on weapons that could have saved lives. And a heavy responsibility rests upon everybody, and I know every government to some extent has done it, who promotes the international arms trade. Because there have been 134 wars since 1945. Millions have died in them, using weapons that were supplied by the superpowers very often. And millions more died because they were denied the resources that were wasted in the arms program itself. Ministers will not tell the House the truth on this matter. Ministers use intelligence, and everybody knows it, we've had a reference to it, and are prepared to sacrifice intelligent people to conceal the truth. This is a matter the House should deal with by select committee. Look at Oliver North. They had him up before a congressional committee and they grilled him for weeks on it, on Watergate. When Peter Wright wrote a book saying he committed treason, they spent millions of pounds trying to prevent the book getting into the hands of the British people. There's the central question here. Who is allowed to buy the weapons? Who controls it? Who knows what happens? Who tells the truth? And finally, does the House take the responsibility for holding government accountable? Or does it shuffle it off like so much else to a commission here, an agency there, or a High Court judge there? Because if it does that, we shall be burying this House as a historic defender of the people we represent, some of whom were sent to fight in Iraq against an army we had armed.
These are all way of life and beliefs. The way people do their things, the way people act. These are real stories in real time from real people. That is the argument, the problem. Now let's go and see what is happening to the areas that we are bombing.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
These are innocent people crying.
الله أكبر
When the bomb goes, and these are people that live in terror every day. But we don't call that terror. I don't know where the word terror comes from. It's from when people are terrified, then they are living in absolute terror. We will see the faces of, look at these few children. They are also children like our children. This is what they go through day in, day out. And this is our way of life. And this is the way we think we are going to fight the wrath that God has sent against our way of life. It's important to understand. This is something very religious, very spiritual. It's not political. You cannot deal with it militarily. It is impossible for you to deal with the wrath that God sent against. So we all know that. end time. And we are seeing that end time. The whole things that were being prophesied in the Bible are coming to fulfillment. And this is it. This is the time we are living. And we know that that time is going to be the anger of God unleashing on people. So why don't we understand that ISIS is the anger of God? And why is God angry? Is that way of life? Is that very point one, that one that they are making? Without fear. But today, if we don't take time, if we don't understand what it is and start to gather ourselves by doing the right thing, trying to change that way of life that makes God allow such anger to befall the earth. If you don't look at it from that point of view, we are continuing and it might swallow you.
لا يا حج اطلع حسبي الله حسبي الله
It might swallow also.
حسبي الله
We all are in danger of crying for one another. If we are crying for Paris people, the people who die, other people will cry for us. Because no one of us now can say he's safe. How do you enter the bank? How do you enter the train? How do you enter the plane? How do you enter the buses? How do you walk on the street? Even in your most safest areas. Where has it not happened? Where can't it happen? It happened in World Trade Center. It happened in Pentagon. It happened in so many other places. We are going to think about that way of life. Why did God allow such evil to befall man? That is the question. And the only way we are still going to talk about it. Now I want to bring also this. These are things that are being compiled by other people, are online. You can make your own, make out your own opinions out of them. But meanwhile, we are playing this also. How come about the name ISIS in the first place? Are we our own problem? The answer is yes. In any way you look at it. Watch this.
Where does this ISIS acronym come from, and what intelligence agency actually uses that acronym ISIS, you ask? Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me a Jewish intelligence agency, Mossad, uses the acronym ISIS its whole entire life? So, I hear from the Jewish media and their Gentile pawns screaming about this ISIS for weeks now, to justify more slaughter and killing of my people back home. Do you think Arabs use acronyms? And when was the last time you ever saw Arabs using acronyms in anything they market or sell? Why would they use English acronyms when they are trying to appeal to constituents that mostly do not speak any English in Arab land? And how fitting that those acronyms are catchy, easy to remember, like ISIS, to be marketed to the blind sheep of the United States. So where does this ISIS acronym come from, and what intelligence agency actually uses that acronym ISIS, you ask? Wait, hold on. You mean to tell me a Jewish intelligence agency, Mossad, uses the acronym ISIS its whole entire life? What? Hold on. Seriously. Well, have a listen for yourself.
You tell the story about how you try to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
That was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up CIA, or in our case the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad is institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, kind of a British model. The British don't really like the names MI5 and MI6.
Did you get that? ISIS. ISIS. Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. You fools. What? Now you're gonna tell me that this al-Baghdadi guy is an Arab leader of a caliphate? Come on. I'm sorry, but just sit down and shut your mouth, because you already know where I'm going to go with this. Yes, he is Jewish, and his name is Simon Elliott. Edward Snowden has already released documents proving that, and a French newspaper has already reported on this. But your Jewish masters in the US, especially your terrorist senator John McCain, will not allow it to be publicized. And here is the same Jewish terrorist Simon Elliott masquerading as a leader of the Islamic Caliphate. And here he is hanging out with your senator John McCain, orchestrating and funding the new terrorist group. This is all nothing but a charade. And do not think for a minute this is just an isolated incident. They have been doing this for a long, long time. It is time to round up and arrest the majority of U.S. congressmen, senators, politicians, bankers, Wall Street executives, and corporate leaders, because they are all guilty of treason. And in this next clip, I will show how the majority of the quote-unquote Muslim terrorist leaders are actually Jewish and are masquerading as leaders of some sort of radical group only to sell you the propaganda right here in the media in the United States.
Adam Gadon, the so-called American Al-Qaeda who proclaimed himself the media maven, if you will, for Al-Qaeda and was helping to produce a lot of these so-called Al-Qaeda videos that were all over the internet that made Al-Qaeda look really bad and made the Muslims look bad.
Should you fail to comply in full, we will deem it sufficient justification to continue to fight and kill Americans.
Come to find out, Adam Gadon's real name was Adam Perlman. And not only was he in fact Jewish, he was the grandson of a member of the board of the Anti-Defamation League. And if you've been following the history of the Anti-Defamation League, you will find out they've been very much involved in covertly supporting a lot of these so-called American Nazi movements. In fact, all the way back, just about the time of World War II, there was this scandal where the head of the American Nazi Party, which had a total membership of like 6, and yet they were getting all this press, was arrested for embezzling from his sponsors, which turned out to be the ADL, so that kind of blew up in their faces. So anyway, we have Adam Perlman, and he's been going around saying, I'm Al-Qaeda, see, I got a turban on my head, I'm a terrible Muslim, gotta hate me, gotta be afraid of me, and of course everybody's laughing at him now because we all know who he is. Okay, so they have brought in the understudy, and there is a new American Al-Qaeda named Yosef Al-Khattab. Ooh, big scary name, and they've got a picture of him out there where he's holding all these guns and knives, and he's dressed up like a wannabe Rambo, and he's scowling at the camera, and he supposedly has this website with things in it, like pictures of the Statue of Liberty with an axe buried in the back of the head. I mean, very heavy-handed, very over-the-top.
There was also a link to a puppet show mocking Danny Pearl's beheading. Take a look.
Oh, that's awful. You know, just looking more like a movie prop than anything else here. So, as it turns out, this is another fake. His real name is Joseph Cohen.
He's a 39-year-old New York City taxi driver, as you mentioned. He called himself Yosef Al-Khattab, but he was born Joseph Cohen here in America. He is a Jew.
And he is another manufactured front to try and convince Americans that Al-Qaeda is actually here in the United States. And this is why we've got to be doing this, doing surveillance on the American people and reading their email and listening to their phone calls and all this stuff, because you never know.
So these are all of it. These are all part of that way of life. Lies, deceit, and all. Lies, deceit, and all. Now, let's listen to this also and know what this video is also talking about.
In which the terrorist label is applied in the United States.
We will hunt down terrorists who threaten our country wherever they are.
So let's play a game. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dylan Roof, a white supremacist who allegedly tried a race war by killing 9 black Americans in a church in Charleston. But he wasn't labelled as a terrorist by the mainstream media or by the FBI. Pakistani-American Jubair Ahmed, on the other hand, was sentenced to 12 years in prison in 2012 for making a YouTube video on behalf of the Pakistani militant group Lashkar-e-Taiba. 9 people killed versus YouTube video. Okay, what about Jared? A man who in 2011 shot Arizona Congresswoman Gabby Giffords and killed 6 other people. Here is an anti-government activist who tried to kill a congresswoman. But he's not a terrorist, apparently. He was charged only with murder and attempted murder. Compare and contrast with Javed Iqbal, a New York businessman sentenced to 6 years in prison for assisting terrorists. What did he do? He provided Americans with access to Hezbollah's satellite channel. Well, if that's terrorism, then Robert Doggett, the man who allegedly plotted to attack an entire Muslim community in New York, must surely have been labelled a terrorist. Not quite. He ended up charged with solicitation to commit a civil rights violation by intending to damage or destroy religious property. He's currently at home awaiting trial. No mention of the T word. Yet here's Tariq Mahanna, a pharmacist who was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison for providing material support to terrorists, for essentially translating Al-Qaeda propaganda videos. Some might say that falls under freedom of speech. So is there a double standard? Not if you're Fox News.
Not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslim.
But hold on, a recent study found that since 9/11, far-right extremists have killed almost twice as many Americans in the US as Muslim extremists. So to sum up, if you're a Muslim American and worried about the T word, be careful when you're going online, visiting YouTube or watching cable, and don't even think about taking a clock to school. If you're a white supremacist, do whatever you like.
Yep. This is the kind of way of life that we are living here. We will see also the way of life among ourselves. If all this, it has nothing to do with ISIS, but it has everything to do with the anger of God on us because of our way of life. We are coming to, these are the government kinds of way of life, and we are coming to the
protests. Seems like when the protesters are black, the media uses some pretty harsh words.
The bad guys. Lawlessness, looting, wild animals, and thugs.
Thugs. Isn't it the right word?
However, if you're white and you're carrying up the city because of a game, you're just young people.
Young people based on a flipped over card as UK fans do stupid things.
Maybe got a little out of control.
Seeing a scene like this just shows how passionate the UK fans are.
It's so tough to lose, and unfortunately the ugly side that we sometimes see in sports.
And notice how the police always show up to a black protest in military-grade equipment, and yet the media claims they're just doing nothing.
It's inexplicable why the police are doing nothing.
Let's mobilize the National Guard. If I'm a riot and I see the police doing nothing, I might feel like I have a license.
You would.
But at white riots, the cops actually are standing around doing nothing.
Cops over there, just standing there.
No one was really doing anything.
These guys look like they could be watching a parade. And why is it that the leadership of the black community is always called into question?
Where is the leadership? The black leadership.
The absence of leadership.
And it goes back to leadership, but that leadership has to come from the community.
But no one ever questions the leadership of white parents who let their kids burn down and vandalize their college campus.
They're just young college students who think they're playing some kind of a game with police officers.
No, sometimes they don't even call a white riot a riot.
Party gone awry.
Some fans got a bit too rowdy after the win.
Dispute a bloody brawl.
There was some type of altercation.
This is just to tell you the kind of way of life that
9
we
people
even
dead.
have among ourselves.
Baltimore? No deaths, but it's a riot, chock full of thugs. What if the media portrayed white rioters the same as black protesters? Let's switch the audio and see how it plays out.
Breaking news, violent protest.
What you're looking at the unraveling of the civil society.
That is the government side and the people side, the media side of. But that is one thing here.
Wild animals burning buildings down.
They know the media's all there, right? Got the cameras on everyone. It's become its own reality show.
Who acts like that towards a police officer?
I like this.
Think for yourself. Don't let racist media color your perceptions.
have
Demand
own
fairness in media coverage. Tell the media to put an end
This
to
is also
calling
my
black
own
people
advice. Let the Muslim world, the people who their religion has been dragged to mourn, come out with a counter.
Americans link all Muslims to terrorism.
Let us get the
Of course, that's
volume.
not fair. Not all Muslims are killers. But I have a message to all Muslims to Americans link all Muslims to terrorism. Now, of course, that's not fair. Not all Muslims are killers or terrorists trying to behead you. But I have a message to Muslim leaders. If they hate this stereotype, and I'm sure they do, they need to help stop it. And that is by having the courage to step up and condemn loudly, clearly, and repetitively Islamic extremism.
I'm going to play it
There
again.
be no ifs, ands, or buts. Islamic extremists are terrorists. Non-Muslims can't fight Islamic extremism alone. We need Muslim leaders. I do appreciate, though, that a week ago an international coalition of more than 120 prominent Muslim scholars wrote an open letter to the leader of ISIS condemning the terrorist group. But that's not enough. I'm living in the shadow of the U.S. Capitol and the White House. Letters end up in black holes. We need so much more. We need Muslim leaders to speak up. So here's my offer. I will give any Muslim leader of national or international stature the platform right here on the record to condemn Islamic extremism and to make a call to arms to every Muslim leader of every mosque to do the same. Condemn Islamic extremism. And that's my off-record comment tonight.
And that's also my own promise to anybody from anywhere. Please, let's wake up, especially the Islamic leaders, to wake up and condemn this, give counter broadcast, counter message, and let them cooperate with the Christians. Try to avoid all this kind of nasty life that we are living here. The films from Hollywood, Bollywood, and Nollywood are the things corrupting this nation, this world. This kind of activities that we see in films, the killings, the kind of activities we see on YouTube, dancing naked. If you open the kind of things that are allowed today in life are the kind of things that should not be there. These are the things that bring about the anger of God. And believe me, ISIS is not doing it with their own powers. We are fighting against the power of God if we fight ISIS by way of war. It is for us to understand this. If you go fight ISIS by way of using arms, you are fighting against the power of God. It is the punishment of our wrongdoing. Look at our children. Look at the freedom of everything that is there, that thing we call our way of life. Look at the gap between the rich and the poor. Even in these countries you call richest nations, there are still beggars in America. Some of us, we term them to be people who are lazy, people who did not do their best, or whatever you like, because you are more educated, forgetting that education is one of the reasons we have fallen this very prey. Artificial knowledge has overtaken our common sense. Somebody is studying, a doctor, a philosopher, he's an engineer, he's a scientist, he's a lawyer, just one man. He occupies himself with artificial knowledge. That's why today Obama, the president of the United States, sometimes says a common sense decision in your what do you call them? The laws to make. You have a law you call the Second Amendment, and that is one of the laws that woman is proud to say is their way of life. What is the law of Second Amendment? What is this law doing to you? It is giving you the right to carry a weapon. It is giving you the right to be bloody. It is giving you the right to kill one another, irrespective of you saying that you are defending yourself. But it makes you become a murderer. It makes you have blood on your hands. That is what that law is. It's not a God-given law. It is a man-made law, and at the same time, man can change it. There are countries that don't have that law, and they are great countries. It is not the Second Amendment law that made America a great country. Instead, it is the law that is putting America to shame. I'm sorry. I know how you love your guns. But we all are seeing also how it is playing out. This very broadcast is for the people to know the war we are into. It's the wrath of God against his people. If you believe you are of God, if we believe that we here in the West are the people, be you a Christian, be you a moderate Muslim like they call it, you are the people of God. God is not choosing you according to your religion. He's choosing you according to your heart, according to how peaceful your heart is. God is not choosing you according to your families. That is that very great work of evil when he implants a child also in a womb where God's own child is. You have a parent having two kids that are not of one family. That is why it is not going to be chosen by your religious beliefs. It's going to be chosen by your hearts. How free, how accommodating. How do you free your mind to know that the other man, not by freeing to know nonsense, to allow things that are openly said, this is wrong. Homosexuality is not freedom of anything. That is animalistic freedom. It is a sickness. It should not be promoted. It should be cured. We have made it rampant as if it's a normal. It is not. It is now the population, because of the promotion, has grown. It was not like this before. If you keep growing it, Africa also will rise to have homosexuals. In my own time, I can say what I know with my age. I never knew our land to have homosexuals even up to this time. But tomorrow with this promotion, it will be the new normal if we allow it to happen. The children of the next generation to wake up to know evil as truth. We have blindfolded ourselves. The anger of God is on us. The anger of God is ISIS. When God sprays his anger on people, he leashes it with deadly attack. And ISIS, we are seeing them coming with deadly attack, infiltrating inside our society just because we are not doing the right thing. And God is at the same time pinpointing to us to say, this is what you have done wrong. We are attacking you. I am using this means to attack you because of your way of life. Look into that way of life, my brothers and sisters. The nightclubs opening, the one man being able to have what's supposed to be owned by a whole village. And that is your way of life. Prostitution everywhere legalized. See the kind of promotions because of money. The films we have that intrude into our homes every day. I'm particular about that because that is a very big source of all the evil that is today thrown around, scattered everywhere in the world. From television, what do we watch? Is this something that educates our children? What in a radio station where you might be listening to a radio in your home or listening to a radio in your car with your children, they are talking about sex. I had listened to a program yesterday where the moderators are asking, how will you give your husband more sex if he do the homework for you, the housework for you? This is the kind of things we listen in our radio. This is just a little of it, but there are more. more stinking things that happen every day in different radio stations from different places around the world. We know that this way of life is evil. Why do we accept that this is a way of life? Because we think that this is enjoyment? What are you enjoying? In a situation where we can no longer enjoy those things, God is showing us that those things are not good. We knew it from the onset, from the 60s. What we are doing today, our fathers in the 60s, in the 50s will tell us this is not a way of life. It's crazy people who live like this. It's people who are going against the will of God. We know it. We disobeyed a lot of things because we claim to be modern people. At the same time, we know that as the world goes, as the world ages, more evil things happen. We allow this prophecy to be fulfilled through our own person. That is the worst of it all. You can make that change. You can be the one man that is not going to allow this to happen. By changing your way of life. Look at what we call today marriage. There is nothing like marriage again. People, even in this life, married to dogs, animals, and they get wedded somewhere in this earth you are living. And this is the kind of things that we promote, that we accept, that we allow and say is a way of life. Is a way of life. What kind of way of life is that? What kind of way of life? Man, I leave you people so far to think about this, and they call on all the Muslims to counter this message from the ISIS destroying their religion. It's not a thing you fight by war. It is a lot of things to do, which if we think, first of all, understand, first of all, accept, first of all, the nature of the problem we are having. There are things we have to do in this problem, and there are things that God has to do for us. There are things we have to do to this problem, in this problem, and there are